it's you. What do you want?
I'm bored!
I could tell you a scary story. It's called... Exeter, Rhode Island, March 1892. 24-year-old Edwin Brown is ill. He's lost weight, he's coughing up blood, and his condition's getting worse. His mother and sisters had died after showing similar symptoms. The local townspeople are convinced that his family is cursed by the undead. They think one of Edwin's family members is feeding from his life force from beyond the grave. The townspeople decide to dig up their bodies to investigate. His mother and older sister show the expected amount of decomposition, but his younger sister, Mercy Brown, shows none. It appears to the villagers that she had turned in her coffin, and her heart has fresh blood inside it. They see this as proof that she's responsible for Edwin's illness. To break the curse, the villagers remove Mercy's heart and liver, burn them, mix the ashes into an elixir, and make Edwin drink it. 2 months later, he dies. The end.
That's not what it says here.
Oh.
Before we talk about vampires, we'll need a quick history lesson about tuberculosis. This is the disease that was responsible for the deaths of Edwin, his mother, and sisters. It was at its peak in the late 1800s. By then, it had killed about 1 in 7 people who had ever lived. Tuberculosis is contagious, so families in close-knit communities are more likely to spread and contract the disease. And transmission was poorly understood at the time, especially in the New England countryside. Once the bacteria is breathed in, it settles in the lungs and slowly spreads to the other parts of the body. Symptoms can disappear temporarily, only to come back even worse. Tuberculosis was referred to as consumption at the time. One of the symptoms was extreme weight loss, which gave the impression that the infected were literally being consumed.
Most people in nearby cities like Providence and Newport didn't believe in vampires. When the papers reported on Mercy Brown's story, residents were appalled, thought it was barbaric. Even Mercy's father, George Brown, didn't believe in the curse, but his neighbors were so fearful for their own safety, they insisted his family must be exhumed. Reluctantly, he gave them permission. George didn't attend the exhumation, but opted to call the local doctor to oversee it. Although Mercy's corpse showed no signs of decay, the doctor tried to convince the townspeople that this was not proof of anything supernatural. Mercy had died only 2 months prior, in January. And since the soil was frozen, her grave couldn't be dug, so her coffin was kept above ground in a freezer-like state. The doctor reasoned that the body's condition was perfectly normal. Unfortunately, he could not persuade the villagers.
The broader New England vampire panic was partially fueled by the prevalence of tuberculosis in the 1800s, along with some misunderstandings about human decomposition. Decay can be slowed by things like dehydration, blood loss, and the absence of fat before death, which happen to align closely with tuberculosis symptoms, like extreme night sweats, coughing up blood, and a loss of appetite. Other grim phenomena observed in corpses further contributed to the belief in the undead. For example, a dark red liquid known as purge fluid builds up in the body as its internal components break down. With nowhere to go, it's forced out of the nose and mouth of a corpse. This may give the illusion that the corpse has been feeding off of the living, and it may explain the accounts of fresh blood being found inside cadavers.
Mercy's name was referenced in H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Shunned House. It also might have inspired one of the characters in Bram Stoker's Dracula, or at least the news article was found on his desk a year before the book was published. Present day, around Halloween, horror enthusiasts make a kind of pilgrimage to Mercy's grave, leaving behind plastic vampire teeth and their names carved in the headstone, which has been stolen several times over the years. Now it's fastened to the ground by an iron strap. Lovecraft said, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." This story can serve as proof. It's hardly about Mercy Brown at all. Rather, it's about the horror of those frightened townsfolk of Exeter, Rhode Island, and their desperation when faced with problems beyond their understanding. That fear is what keeps the story alive today.
So Mercy wasn't a real vampire?
No,
Were there any real vampires in New England?
probably not.
Are you a real vampire?
Of course I'm a real vampire. How dare you? I've blood lineage in my
The other day, I saw you checking yourself out in the mirror. Explain that.
I'm not doing it.
vampires are known for
Vampire?
being very...
More like a glampire. Yeah. Are you even from Transylvania?
I'm from Pennsylvania. It's the same thing.
Now it comes out. How about last weekend? I never invited you to my party. How'd you get in?
The party was here. I didn't need to be... I live here. I don't need to explain myself to you.
You're not a real vampire. You're not
Are you a real werewolf?
It looks like it stopped raining. I guess he is a real vampire.
I'm digging on Mercy Brown in a backyard grave downtown. I'm digging on Mercy Brown.